Great. How about you, Robert?
I am doing phenomenal. I'm really excited about the conversation that we're going to be having today, where you are going to be walking us through really from soup to nuts, A to Z on the different types of business organizations, right? So first of all, everyone, we know it's a Saturday morning. We thank you for, again, joining us. One of the most popular topics in the Black Financial Literacy group that we continue to get posts about, questions about, and just quite frankly, I'm lost and I need in. And I want to make sure you can hear me. Can everyone hear me?
I think it went out. Everybody got muted, and then I had to unmute myself.
Oh, well, I get to say my whole, introductory speech again. Good morning, everyone. We're glad that you joined us today. If you couldn't hear me before, I'm Robert H. Johnson, and I'm excited to be here with business extraordinaire Delinda Russell, who's going to walk us through the different types of business organizations and formations. This is going to be a really important conversation because as the community, there are 4 different things that we want to learn more about and to grow in. And those areas are small business and entrepreneurship, savings and budgeting, credit and mortgages, right? And overall career, professional development, and vision planning. And so today, this will kick off a series of conversations and discussions that we're going to have, particularly about small business, because if we rank them, you said that small business is important. And I want to, share a quote. I was watching the Breakfast Club interview, Delinda, recently, which was yesterday, where they had Jamil Hill on and another young lady. They have a show. And one of the things that Jamil said, and Jamil used to be on ESPN, she said, ownership is key. I don't just want to have a job. At this stage in my life and in my career, I want to work with people, not just for people, right? So it was perfect timing, Delinda, for our conversation this morning. So Delinda, you ready to get started and to jump in?
Yes, and I'm going to actually give a quote too. Ownership is part of the wealth building process. There's no way that we can get to the next level in life if we don't own things. And businesses is one of the most important things that you can own next to land and property. So yes, I'll get started, Robert. Thank you so much. So thank you guys all again for taking the time out of your Saturday morning to join us. We are going to talk about small business startup. And this will be a multi-series project here. So without further ado, I'm going to get started. So one of the most important things that you can do as a business owner is choose the appropriate business structure. So this morning, we are going to talk about sole proprietorships, nonprofits, limited liability companies, and partnerships. These are by far the most common business structures that new businesses select. Sole proprietorships. Sole proprietorships are commonly called doing business as or sole props. It is a type of enterprise that is ran and operated by one person and one person only. There is no legal distinction between the business owner and the business entity. The major reason why people choose a sole proprietorship is the fact that it's easy and inexpensive to start. You have complete and total control over the business, and you pay no corporate taxes, and there is no annual filing. The cons to having a sole proprietorship is that you're personally liable for all debt. If you grow, you cannot transfer that business history from your sole proprietorship to LLC, and it can be challenging to obtain business loans. So let's talk a little bit about sole proprietorships. They are by far the easiest and the most convenient business to start. To open your own sole proprietorship, you have to file the documents at your local county clerk's office. So it's the document that you file at your local county clerk's office. The document name is typically called an assumed name document, and it varies from state to state. But once you file this document, you are officially a business owner. There is nothing else that you need to do. You do not need an employer identification number, which is the EIN, which we'll talk about later on in the presentation. You are officially a business owner once you complete this document. And it's very easy to do. So now let's talk about the cons of having a sole proprietorship. As I said previously, personal liability for all debt. That's huge. There is no asset protection when it comes to sole proprietorships. So the ideal business for a sole proprietorship would be something that has minimal risk associated with the daily operations of the business. So what is that? A boutique or an online store is something that has a minimum risk with the daily operations. If you have a business where you are actively out and engaging with people, say for example, you have a lawn care business and you have big equipment and trucks and maybe you have 100 yards that you do, a sole proprietorship is not ideal because what will happen is if there's an accident on the road or if there's an accident with the equipment, that person can sue you and come after your personal assets, your home, your retirement, whatever it is, it's not protected. So sole proprietorships are ideal for people who have businesses that have minimum risk associated with the day-to-day operations. And again, they're easy to start. And even if you're just starting a new business and you don't have the money to start a LLC or a corporation, it's ideal to use. But if you have a lot of risk associated with your day-to-day operations, do not do a sole proprietorship.
Delinda, that's such a great point. And what it sounds like is the first step into entrepreneurship may be a sole proprietorship. Am I thinking about that correctly? Starting small, growing?
Yes, but the only challenge to having a sole proprietorship is that you cannot transfer that history. So depending on what your ultimate goal is, you might need to start a little bit bigger. And that you'll discover that if you plan appropriately, you'll know what your ultimate goal is.
So for example, if you have a t-shirt business, right? That's something I just make t-shirts and I sell them at festivals, or, as demand, right? Would you say that's more, you can start as a sole proprietor there, or again, it depends on the risk?
Okay. Absolutely. You can start as a sole proprietorship if you're just selling t-shirts and it's just you. And you can stay as a sole proprietorship. And the benefit of that is that you don't have to worry about filing all the annual paperwork that goes with having other businesses. And you don't have to worry about making sure your taxes and everything are, done separately. So yes, that's ideal.
Thank you.
All right. You're welcome. The next one, nonprofit. Nonprofit is a baby in its own. And later on, we're going to have a separate presentation just on nonprofits. So today I'm going to talk about nonprofit at the basic baby level. So a nonprofit is an organization that has been granted tax exemption status by the IRS because it furthers a social cause and provides a public benefit. The major benefit to having a nonprofit is that you obtain tax deductibility and then you receive a tax exemption status from the IRS. So what does that mean, right? Tax deductibility means that it becomes a benefit for people and organizations to give you money if you are a nonprofit, because now they are able to write that information off on their taxes. It's similar to what you see at church. At the end of the year, how you receive a statement that says, this is how much you tithe, and then you take it to your tax preparer and they now take it off of your taxes. That's what a nonprofit does. And then you also receive tax exemption status with the IRS. That means that you do not have to pay taxes on the money that your organization obtains, as well as you receive access to grants that traditional businesses do not have. So the tax deductibility status opens up the door for your social cause and public benefit organization to obtain free money from the government. Now, a nonprofit has its own separate existence and the protection of an LLC. Now, this right here is very important. This means that you do not own your nonprofit. There are no owners to a nonprofit. The nonprofit is ran by a board, which you develop before you start your nonprofit. The board basically controls the nonprofit, and your nonprofit might have multiple boards. So in actuality, you can start a nonprofit, you can birth it, you can nurture it, and eventually you can not be inside of it, or you can even be kicked off or out of your nonprofit because decisions are made by the board. And there's all types of things that go into having a nonprofit, but a nonprofit has bylaws, and the bylaws govern the nonprofit. And inside of the bylaws, each position on the board, which is a president, vice president, treasurer, and so on, decisions are made by votes. And then there are terms for every position. So if I'm the president, if in the bylaws it says that my term is 3 years, that's all I have as a president. And then in the next 3 years, they have to vote the new president in. So if my vision is not aligning with what the rest of the people in the organization is trying to do, I could be eventually voted out, even though I started the nonprofit. So that's a lot to take in at one time.
Belinda.
I know it is. It is, but I am going to do another presentation on nonprofits because you have to understand it, and understanding it means understanding everything that goes into having a nonprofit. And not only that, if you are looking to get money, because the whole benefit of having access to grants and tax deductibility sounds good to you, is not ideal for you, because you do not receive a salary for being on the board of a nonprofit. So everything that you do for a nonprofit, if you're on the board, typically it comes out of the kindness of your heart. So you have an option. You can be either an employee of the nonprofit and you can be paid if that's what you want to do, and maybe have an input in the day-to-day operations of your nonprofit, or you can be on the board and help make the decisions for the organization in total, but you won't receive pay for doing so. You have a question? I know that was a lot.
No, I don't have a question. I'm shocked. I'm flabbergasted that what you told us is you can start a nonprofit because, again, it furthers a social cause. Let's say, I want to help single mothers, go to school, right? And so I provide educational, training to a specific demographic to further a social cause. Where I'm challenged and struggling with is, wow, I can create an organization, then eventually be voted out of that organization by the board.
Yes, the nonprofit is its own existence. So it is very important. The board is the most important piece of a nonprofit. And that's actually one of the cons, because your nonprofit is only as strong as the board members you have. If your board members don't have a clear vision, and if they're not dedicated and committed to the growth of the organization, then you have a weak nonprofit, because there's a lot of energy that goes into the development of a nonprofit, and there's a lot of free time that goes into it. So you want to make sure that you have people in good places that are dedicated to your ultimate vision for what you have going on in your nonprofit. So, and because you receive tax dollars that are untaxed by the government, is highly regulated. So your money has to be accounted for. Every dollar that goes in and out of your nonprofit has to be accounted for, as well as the grant dollars. When you obtain grants from the federal government or organizations, sometimes they come with rules or stipulations attached to the money of where the money is supposed to go. And you have to account for all of that grant money. You have to account for everything that goes in and out. And there's filings that you have to do annually, and sometimes semi-annually if they have questions about just the organization. So it is a very time-consuming entity. You have to have dedicated people. It can work, you just need the right people in the right places. So how do you start a nonprofit? You need a corporation, and that's not one of the accounts that or business entities that we'll talk about today. It'll be at the next presentation. But you have to start a corporation, and then you file for your tax exemption status with the IRS. There's an application to do so. It's about 25, maybe 30 pages long. But the most important thing that you would need to complete that application is a concrete business plan with the vision and everything else. Because if you have a business plan, you can transfer that information to the application, and it makes it that much more easier. So yes, and then when you apply for the status, the status can take anywhere between 3 to 6 months to be approved, and that was pre-COVID. And the application fee is $600. Just to, yes. So that's why it's important to have the right people in the right places, because there's time and there's money that goes into making sure you obtain your tax deductibility status.
Yeah, I think this was really important, Delinda, because I hear a lot of people say, I want to start a nonprofit. I want to start a nonprofit. And this information is very, very relevant and crucial to understand. And I love how you've outlined this, the pros and the cons, right? The risks and the rewards, right? The rewards for a nonprofit are that you're furthering that social cause. The risk is that one, you don't own it. It's its own entity, and you can be removed from the baby that you birthed. That's a real tough pill for me. You see, I'm struggling with that one, right?
Absolutely.
You know,
And
people have.
you have to be in it for the right reason. If you're going to open a nonprofit, like, you have to do it honestly out of the kindness of your heart. You have to be a giving person, because there's no money in it for you. So your reward is starting this and furthering the social cause. That's it.
Yeah. Well,
Yes.
again, I love it. I'm going to move on from my struggle because I could keep us here all day. But thank you. This is really awesome.
All right, so the next one is limited liability, LLC. This is a common business structure that a lot of people decide to go with. It is a distinct type of entity that has the powers of a corporation and a partnership. The business structure whereby the owners are not personally liable for the company's liabilities. The owners are called members, and members can be individuals, they could be partnerships, they can be trusts, and they could be other legal entities. So once you start moving into this category of LLCs, if you notice, I said that they can be, a member can be a corporation or a trust. People start to play the tax game here. Now, I'm not a tax advisor, but I do have a CPA and a bookkeeper that I work with. But there's benefits to having your organization owned by a corporation and the trust. I'm not going to go into those because, like I said, I'm not the tax advisor, but I plan to have a tax advisor talk about some of the benefits that come with having these corporations. But next page. Limited liability company. The pros are members aren't personally liable for companies' actions. There's flexible management, and there's flow-through taxation. Flow-through taxation is basically the money is reported. The income and the losses that you receive on your in your corporation or your limited liability company can be reported on your personal taxes, and there's a benefit to that. The cons are that it can be expensive to start and to maintain. Okay, so depending on what state you're in, to start an LLC can be anywhere between, on a low end, maybe $50, on a high end, maybe $600, $800. And then there's annual filing reports that are needed with your LLC. And that is important because when you file your paperwork, they're not going to tell you that you have to come back every year or every 3 years or every 4 years. And it's expensive if you let that license lapse. So I know for a fact that if you start an LLC in the state of California, once you've had it for 6 months, there's an $800 tax that you have to pay. So you need to make sure that you do your due diligence and you know what reports need to be done annually, what annual fees need to be paid, or if there's a tax that needs to be paid that goes along with that.
Delinda, let me interject if you don't mind. I wish I had you had done this presentation 2 years ago, because when I formed my business 2.5 years ago in Texas, you know, as you said, you paid for your licensure. And then next thing I know, 2 years later, I'm getting a notification that my licensure has been suspended because of what you said. I didn't pay or file taxes, right? Now, so the beautiful thing is that in Texas, you don't have to file taxes for anything less than $1.5 million. I will have that problem someday. It's not my problem today, but I didn't know. I did not know. But had I had this information, which is why for all of you that are watching and taking notes today, please, please, please invest in one, your due diligence, as Delinda said, but two, a coach. Delinda is someone who's not only an entrepreneur, but she's a business coach, and she teaches people how to set up businesses the right way. So Delinda, I wish I had this information from you a couple years ago. Now, my business is back in right standing. I want to be clear and honest. It costs me more money, but had I had this information, Delinda, I wouldn't have made that mistake.
Yes. So
Delinda, I have a question. Can we get this PowerPoint? Can you email us this PowerPoint, please?
I can email you some information, but the PowerPoint is actually owned by Monarch Business Services. So what I'll do is I'll make sure if you send me an email, and I'll go over it at the end, I'll make sure that I get all of the information to you. Thank you so much, Devonna, though. I'll make sure I get you everything that you need. I'm sorry, I did something. There was a last talking point, and I don't want to go back because I don't know how to go back and not mess everything up. But the last talking point for the LLC was that there has been a weakening in the limited liability for sole owners of LLCs. So when you file your paperwork, there's such thing as a group or a partnership LLC, and then there's another thing as a sole member managed LLC. A sole member managed LLC operates similar to a sole proprietorship, to where you file the same tax returns at the end of the year. You do the 1040, which is attached to your personal taxes. And then with the partnership, there's other documentations that you have to file to do your taxes. But recently, probably within the past few years, there was a case in Florida where a LLC sole member was being sued, and the judge ruled that the person who was suing the business was able to get some money from the business owner's personal assets. So it's important to, if you have a big business, if you have big plans for your business, you always want to see if you can consult with an attorney when it comes to setting up your business, because that can save you a lot of money. It might seem like a lot of money to have to pay for an attorney because their fees are $250, maybe $300, depending on what it is you're looking to do per hour or 15 minutes, whatever it may be. But in the long run, it's going to save you money depending on how big you want your business to get, because things are changing and they're changing all the time. And you might think that because you have an LLC, you're protected from certain things, but by talking to an attorney and talking to a tax advisor, they'll be able to point you in the right direction and make sure that you structure your business appropriately so that you have that asset protection for your personal assets. And that's what you want. All right, that was a lot. Partnerships. There are two types of partnerships. You can be a limited partner, and then you can be a limited liability partner. The major difference between the both of them is that the limited partners only have one general partner and the rest of them are unlimited. What does that mean? The unlimited partner in the business is personally responsible for any losses that the business takes. So with the partnership, the limited partnership, there's one person that has unlimited liability, meaning that that person can be sued for more than they put into the business. Limited means that if you are a limited liability partner, it means that there's only a certain limit to what a person can take from you. They can only take from you what you put into your organization. So if I am a partner and I only put in $100,000 into the organization and somehow I get sued, the person that is suing me can only take the $100,000 that I put into the business. If I am an unlimited partner, they can take the $100,000 plus whatever else I have. So that is the major difference in the partnerships between the limited partner and then the limited liability partner. And again, consult with an attorney, tax advisor, whoever you need to consult with before you make these decisions, because these decisions can cost you a lot of money if you do it wrong. Okay, so I decided to put some sample documents inside of here just to kind of show you what the certifications look like, or the documentation that you have to complete looks like when you open a business account. Now, they do vary from state to state, so I did both states that I love and that are near and dear to my heart because I am a Michigander and I now reside in Texas. So in Michigan, you have to use the Articles of Organization, and if you can just look at it, I know it might be a little blurry. It is a simple document. There is no need for you to go on LegalZoom or to pay somebody to do this document for you, because if you look at it, it's very simple. They're asking you in this question right here, who's your registered office, your registered agent. You just put your information there. You name the company that you're looking to start. And then you put information in here that's asking you, are you going to be perpetual, which basically means, is there an end date to your organization? There's not. So you are perpetual. And then just the rest of the information. If you look at it, it's very simple to do. And what I'm going to do at the end is I'm going to give you guys my email address. And if you have any questions about the documents that you need in your state, you can send me an email. I'll look it up and I'll send you the link so that it can be easy for you to do. So to open a LLC or a limited partnership, you file the paperwork with your state, and it's typically online. Michigan, you can do it online, or you can mail it in, or you can fax it in. The state of Texas, you can do the same thing. You can mail it in, or you can do it online. It is very easy to do. The biggest challenge is just making sure that you're on the right site, because there's so many people that are advertising to get money. When you type in start a business in Michigan, you might get a completely different website. So just know what site you're on. Know that it's free. Like, there should be no fee for, there should be no additional fees other than the application fee. But again, as I said, if you have questions about the documentation, send me an email and I'll make sure I point you in the right direction. Do you have a question, Robert?
Just yes. In Texas, what's the name of that site? I think
it's SOS. So the Secretary of State, Texas SOS, and then in Michigan is Laura. Every state is different, but what I've seen from working with people in different places, a majority of the time is the SOS, Secretary of State, is where you go to file the documentation. And as I said, the documents vary from state to state, but if you can see the information on here, this information is very basic. It is very simple.
Yeah, thank you.
You're very welcome. Terminology that you may not see when it comes to applying for your LLC or your business license in general. You might see the member managed, and you might see the manager managed. Now, there's a big difference, and you want to make sure you get it right the first time. The member managed is the owner who is responsible for the day-to-day operations of the business. So if I have a business and I'm going to be working in the business, which most people do, when you start a business, you work inside the business until it gets to where you want it to be, and then maybe you do something other, then that would be member managed. Now, if I am a manager managed, that means that I designate people, or I might designate a board to run the day-to-day operations of my business. So that is for people that are very big, where you don't have to get in there and physically do the day-to-day operations. And my goal is to one day be a managed business where I have a board and everybody else that kind of takes care of my day-to-day operations. You'll also see LLC domestic and LLC foreign. Domestic LLC is basically if your business or if your actual address is in the state of which you are registering your business, you would be domestic. And LLC foreign means that you are either in another state or you are either out of the country. Now, that is important because some people choose to open businesses or to obtain business license in different states such as Delaware, Maryland, and Las Vegas because they have different tax laws. So you don't have to reside in a particular state to file business documentations in a different state. And again, that's a tax game. I work with people who play the tax games. You need a tax advisor, a CPA, because they know the ins and the outs of making sure that you pay as less as possible. Registered agent. Now, registered agent is going to be on just about all the applications that you fill out. A registered agent is the person who receives important notices, like if you're being served. So if you're being served, if you're being sued and you have to go to court, the information that you put on the application as a registered agent is going to receive the notice. So you want to put it somewhere where you can make sure that you get a notice, because if you don't get a notice, you run the risk of not being informed and you run the risk of having a judgment against you or your business. EIN number is basically a social security number that is assigned to your business. It's provided by the IRS. Once you open your actual business, you can go to irs.gov and you can apply for an EIN number. It's very easy to get. You enter your information in, and typically at the end of the application, you will have your EIN number that you can print off and you can put inside of your documentation. But what I have heard is due to COVID, that now it might be some additional documentation required where it might be mailed to you. So I'm not sure, but I have heard that from a couple of clients. Your DUNS number is basically another social security number, but it reports your business credit. And business credit will be another webinar that we will have on how to build business credit. But it's important to have a DUNS number to start establishing business credit. You cannot have business credit without a DUNS number.
Delinda, what's so important about this slide in particular, one is if you don't understand the verbiage, you may, misrepresent your business mistakenly, right? But one of the key things that I've seen as a small business owner is during COVID, as you brought up, there's a lot of programs that are now being offered. There's a lot of money out there that's accessible, from the SBA programs, the EIDL, the Payment Protection Program, but there's other grants and programs that have now been introduced as a result of COVID. And they ask specific questions like, what is your EIN number? What is your bank account number, right? What is your DUNS number? And it's, at first you're like, you want all my information, but it's to your point, right? You're a legitimate business and you don't want to miss out because you don't have this data.
Absolutely. And you know what, you just segue into it's actually the slide behind the slide. So I'm gonna come back to that. And if I forget, you just bring me back to it, okay? Yes. So it's important to make sure you use your resources. There are lots of resources out there as a business owner. SBA.gov is the best resource. Anything that you could think of, from business loans to mentorship programs to how to write your business plan, all of that information is there. And they have a great program called SCORE, where you can, ask questions about businesses, and just about everything that you could think of, you can find on the SBA website. Now, I am a business consultant, and I would love for you guys to come to me, and I'm passionate about what it is I do. But I also want to be fair, but, just be open and give you guys information that you can go out and research and do your due diligence. Because if you're a business owner, you need to make sure that you are resourceful. If you're not anything else, you need to be resourceful.
That's why I call you the queen of all things business, because Delinda will find out about so here's the thing, Delinda won't say it, but I want to take a moment to celebrate you and recognize you, Delinda. I've learned so many things from you about not just my business organization, but here are some classes that I'm taking. Here are some things that I'm learning, right? You've actually influenced me to be more of a student in my field of study. So I want to say thank you. And if you don't recognize, if she's invested time and energy into putting, this deck together and other decks together for her clients and sharing that with us. So Delinda, thank you for being so open to share and helping us along our business and entrepreneurship journey.
Thank you. And the most important thing to do is invest in yourself. Whatever it is that you're looking to do, you have to take the time and invest in yourself and become a master of what it is that you do. You own your own business, you own your own talents, you're responsible for yourself. And if you want to take the next step into entrepreneurship, you have to have that same energy, and it's rewarding. When you start earning money off of what it is you believe that you're great at doing, it is so rewarding, and trust me, you will not stop. I love it. Yes. So checklist. This is just a sample checklist. If you're getting started with the business, you need a checklist. It keeps you on plan. It keeps you on pace. A checklist right along with your business plan will set you up for success. So I will be at the end of the email. At the end of the slide, I have my email address. Make sure that you send me an email, and I will make sure that you guys get the business checklist and a couple of other tools that I have for you.
Look at you just giving, Delinda.
I'm a giving person.
You are.
All right. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to take it back. I'm going to take it back to what we were just talking about, and when you were talking about due to COVID and all the other things that's going on, how there's grants and business loans and everything out there, but you have to provide your information. There's a lot of important things. So I'm always like, one of the most important things, but one of the most important things that you can do as a business owner is to make sure that you run and operate your business as a business. Because at the end of the day, if you do not run and operate it as a business, meaning having separate accounts, not commingling your personal accounts with your business accounts, don't have an account set up, period, then you miss out on opportunities. There's so many people that I worked with pre-COVID that didn't have business accounts set up, that didn't have EINs set up, that were operating businesses and didn't have an actual business name set up. And when COVID hit and then the grants and the loans were out there, they didn't qualify for them because you did not operate your business as a business. So you missed out on the opportunity to get an EIDL loan or to get the Paycheck Protection loan. So make sure that you run your business as a business from day one. Have your account set up, have your EIN number. Make sure that, you know, the money that you put in that account is for the business. Make sure that you're paying yourself out of your business account. So that was the one thing that I wanted to talk about first. So now I'm going to go back to the top part of the screen. So these are things that you need to know in business that nobody else will ever tell you. It is extremely important for you to know your partner. If you go into a limited partnership or a limited liability partnership, you need to know the financial status of the individual that you're going into the relationship with. It's almost like a marriage. If that person has child support, or if they have tax liens, or if they owe back due taxes to the state, that can impact your business. That will impact you being able to be eligible for contracts with the federal government, or contracts at the state level. It will impact you all over. And it's a possibility that because that person has those judgments against them, that they can come for the money in the business account, or the business accounts can be placed on hold. So you need to make sure that you know your partner. It's a marriage at the end of the day. State sales tax. If you're opening up a business where you're going to be selling items or you have an online store, you're going to have to pay state sales tax. So you need to make sure you do your due diligence and figure out what all goes into making sure that you're covering all the taxes that need to be paid, because there's nothing worse than starting a business and a couple of years later you get this big notice in the mail about money that you owe. Personal credit is important. In order for you to receive funding as a small business, if you need funding, you're going to have to be a personal guarantee on that business loan. They're just not going to give you a business loan starting out and there's no personal guarantee. So you have to make sure that you work on your personal credit in order to obtain funding and use your resources. SBA is a great resource. And when you are looking to obtain funding, you're not going to get funding from the Chase, the Bank of America, the Wells Fargo. You need to be resourceful and use SBA and go with micro lenders, like institutions that give loans to the development of minority businesses or businesses in certain areas. All that information is out there, and don't be discouraged if you get a no. Perfect example, I have a family member that just opened a business and they went through SBA and they went through maybe 4 local lenders and they got 2 no's, and at the end they ended up getting 2 yeses. So you have to be resourceful and you have to have the energy and the dedication to keep going when it seems like it's not going to work for you. It's your dream. You have to believe it and see it through to the end. Business plan. This is the most valuable asset that you will have for your business. It is the guideline. You should not be opening up a business if you do not have a business plan. And we'll talk about that later. There's so many different things that we'll talk about, and I'm trying to sum things up to give you guys time at the end. But the business plan, you need a business plan. I talked about separating your personal and business accounts. Pay yourself first. How do you determine to pay for your business, right? You have to, there's certain things that you need to look at. Based off of whatever position you are, say for example, in my business, I'm a project manager. A good baseline for me determining the pay that I will receive is looking at other project managers in my area, looking at their salary, and then taking 80% of what that salary is. That is a good baseline of figuring out what you're worth per hour as a business owner. You always want to consider that. Find a mentor. Don't reinvent the wheel. Find something that works for you. If there is somebody that is doing what you like, that has been quite successful, reach out to them, get a mentor, because you can learn from their mistakes. You don't have to make the same mistakes that somebody else made. And that is extremely, extremely important. I'm not down for making mistakes. I'm not down for losing money. So if I see somebody that's doing something that I'm doing, or doing something better than what I'm doing, I'm always reaching out. I use my resources. And then take advantage of your minority certifications at every level. there's a benefit to being a minority-owned business or historically underutilized business. You want to make sure that you take advantage of it at every level, at the federal government level, at the state level, and at your local level. And if you don't know what I mean about that, send me an email and I'll break it down for you just for the sake of time. Questions? You
Yes.
can reach me at monarchbusinessservices@gmail.com. This is my business here. This is my baby. And I know the email looks a little complicated because there's 3 S's in a row. I guess I didn't think about that before I selected it, but it's monarchbusinessservices@gmail.com. And now we will open it up to any questions that you may or may not have. And if we don't get a chance to get to all the questions for the sake of time, send it to me in an email and I'll respond as quickly as possible.
Well, Delinda, as we're waiting on questions, I want to first say thank you so much. This was very informative. It was important as well as inspiring information, right? For those of us who are at whatever phase in the life of our business, the thought of a business, startup and or midlife of a business. So great information. And if you have questions, you can either unmute and ask your question, or you can type your questions in the chat box for Delinda, as well as if you want, you can email her directly. Of course, as someone asked, Devon, I believe, asked for the presentation, please email Delinda at monarchbusinessservices@gmail.com so you can connect with her directly and get the information that you need. So in advance of the first question coming up, I have a clarifying question, Delinda, because this was a lot of great information, or just a question. When you started, how much of this was learned over the journey, or how much was pre-work before you even started your business?
So it's a lot because I've been doing this for so long and I didn't realize what I was doing. My background is in the financial services industry. So I was a manager inside of the banking system for forever. And all of this was basically information that I acquired over years and that I've been using, but as well as I've invested in my skills and my talents. I read a lot. I go to seminars. I'm always doing something. In my spare time, I know what I'm worth per hour. So there's things that I don't do that are minimum wage things. And I learned that in a book. Like, once you know what you're worth per hour, you don't do minimum wage tasks. So I do my best to structure my time so that I'm always continuously learning different things. And I attach myself to people that are going in the direction that I want to be. So I would say it's 50% was learned, and then 50% just kind of came naturally to me. But I invest in myself regularly. I just got a shipment of books yesterday of things that, I'm getting ready to learn.
Well, I love what you said. Can you elaborate on the don't do tasks below your wage? I think that's tough for business owners, right? Because you want to do it all.
Yeah, you don't do tasks. Like, once you figure out what your hourly wage is, then you understand the importance of making sure that you appropriate your time where needed. I know that there are certain things that I need to get done in a day. So I have to wake up early. I'm waking up at 6, and I have 2 little kids. If you guys don't know, I have 2 babies below 2. So I'm waking up early in the morning to make sure that I appropriate my time in the areas that they are. And I have a watch that sets off the timer. So I know how long I'm doing certain tasks. And if I'm doing it longer, if I'm cleaning longer than an hour and that's the timer that I have set, it's not gonna get done because I know what my dollar worth is per hour. And once you change your mentality from I believe they call it the scarcity mentality, where you're always just scrambling for things, then your business will grow. You will grow as an individual because you value what you're putting your energy inside of.
I love that. I love that scarcity mentality. And too many of us operate in that place as entrepreneurs or career professionals, right? There's more than enough, right, for everyone, and appropriately, as you said, allocate and appropriate your time based on your priorities. Yeah, love that. So what questions do we have? Any questions in the chat? Let's see.
I do have a question for you, Delinda. Going back to the nonprofit, which I found to be very, very interesting, some of the things that you discussed. When it comes to the board members of the nonprofit organization, who selects those board members?
So in the baby phase, you select those board members. So you can do a lot of your pre-work for a nonprofit before you actually obtain your status. And when you do your application, I believe they ask for your board members. So you have to have your people in places. So before you actually start a nonprofit, you should be operating as if you are already a nonprofit and getting everything together. So you will already know who's your president, your vice president. You'll already have your bylaws together. You'll know the terms of each position and everything else. So you get all of that together at the beginning, and then your baby takes off.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Any other questions?
Yeah, I've got a question.
Michael?
Yeah, if you were researching grants and you wanted to start a business, the nonprofit, are there certain nonprofits that are more likely to get a grant than others?
Well, that's an interesting question. When you start looking into the stipulations of obtaining a grant for a nonprofit, there's usually requirements that a nonprofit has to have. And the requirements are usually that you are an established nonprofit. You have to have history with being a nonprofit before you can obtain a lot of those grants, because they want to make sure that you're operating your business or your nonprofit appropriately. So a lot of times they might have a time frame as far as how long have you been operating. They might request tax statements from your organization. So it's really just the legitimacy is what they're looking for. How long have you been doing it? What does your returns look like? And then other specific information. So there's really not one, but they want to make sure that you are a nonprofit and that you're operating in that headspace. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, sort of. And I was just wondering, I mean, if you're at the baby stage and you really want to get involved, but you don't have the finances to be involved, I was just wondering if there was, like the likelihood that you'd get a grant if you go in certain directions versus not, going in another direction.
I can answer your question for that. Okay, so if you are starting a nonprofit and you're looking to get a grant, you don't want to look for grants at the federal level, which is the highest level of government. You want to look for grants at the lowest level, which is the state level or local organization. So your focus would be more so on like maybe your local YMCA or other nonprofit organizations that have grants to give out to individuals. So you want to start small and then go big in order to obtain money for your nonprofit. If you start at the federal level, you're more than likely not going to be able to obtain funding.
So if to get a grant from the federal level, can an individual do it, or do you have to be sponsored, or how does that work?
You have to be, okay, so when you go to the website, there is a website, and I'll send you guys the website because I don't know it off the top of my head, but when you go to that website, in the search column, you can search for grants for individuals, you can search for grants for businesses, you can search for grants for nonprofits, just about every organization that you have. It's just a matter of what you're looking for. Now, if you are an individual, which would be you or I, or if you're just a regular business, they have grants that you can obtain. It just depends on what your focus or what you're looking to accomplish. So for example, I was researching a grant most recently on prisoner reentry because I do, one of my services is I provide job placement services, and it's typically for individuals who have disabilities. And in the working industry, a disability could be a criminal record, right? So I was researching as a business, not a nonprofit, how can I obtain this grant? And this grant is eligible for businesses just like me. I'm a LLC. But the requirement of me obtaining the grant is a little bit shaky. There's different requirements that I have to obtain or that I have to have in order to be eligible for it. And one of the requirements is that my business has to work specifically with an established nonprofit in order for me to get the grant as a business owner. And then there's another grant that I've been looking at where it provides job skills training for individuals. So say, for example, I want to open up what do they call it? Gosh, I'm trying to, my mind is blank right now, but where you provide people with skills at like, I can't think of the word, but say, for example, I wanted to help people become machinists, and I wanted to have a course for them to become machinists and to work on a machine. In order for me to receive that grant, I have to work with the local college. So a lot of times there's stipulations inside of the grant that you have to make sure that you accomplish before you can apply for the grant. A lot of times, if you are an individual business, it might require some partnership for you to obtain that grant.
Thank you, Delinda. That was very informational.
And I'm trying to think of the word, apprenticeship. If I wanted to open an apprenticeship program, I don't know why I went blank. If I wanted to do an apprenticeship program, I would have to partner with the local college in order for me to receive the grant from the state of Texas. So there's stipulations. They vary from organization or grant maker to grant maker, but you have to know what's inside of it. And the applications are always lengthy. So you have to make sure you understand the ins and outs.
Yeah. Thanks again.
I'm sorry, I have a question. Delinda, is there like a list of books that you could possibly give so that people can sort of be as a reference or focus point? You said you had a shipment of books that you just received. Could you give us, I know you gave us a couple of books online on Facebook the other day, but is it possible we could get like a detailed list or an area?
I'll send it to you the email, but I love Profit First for Business Owners. That is a great book. It talks about how to break down your business and make sure that you're successful as a business owner. I love Rich Dad Poor Dad because those principles flow over from, you know, just your personal life into your business life. And then there's another business one that I'm not able to think of off the top of my head, Tax-Free Wealth. Oh my God, that is by far the best book that I've read on how to organize your business and how to make sure that you avoid paying unnecessary taxes. It talks about how the rich get wealthy and how to operate your business and everything else. So Tax-Free Wealth is a good one too. So I'll put that inside the email for you.
Great question, Devonna.
Thank you very much, Delinda. I appreciate it.
No problem.
So we have just a few more minutes, maybe time for one or two more questions before we give everyone time back to enjoy your Saturday. Does anyone else have a question for Delinda? I get to talk to Delinda offline, so I'm going to save my selfish questions for our offline discussion. But
I have one more question. What is a K corporation, Delinda? Do you know?
A K corporation, that is very complicated, and that's going to be in one of many series. And when I do that one, I'm going to have a tax advisor on the line so that they can really explain it, because I would hate to juggle the details of a K corporation because that is very, very complicated.
Okay. Oh, one more question. How do you determine your worth? Your hourly worth? You made that comment earlier.
So the example that I use is that you go by whatever your title is. So if I'm a project manager, I would research project managers in the area of which I live. I will look at their salary, and then I would pay myself 80% as a business owner of what that person is making. That is a good baseline for how you determine what's your worth for your business.
and can I add something to that, Delinda?
Yes.
Yeah, because as a consultant and a coach, that's always, and I'm sure all of us on the line have a number of what in our mind of what we want to make per year. But for me, as an example, to Delinda's point, as a coach and as a consultant, I have taken the time to, one, look at the amount of time and experience I have in the space. Am I an expert? And quite frankly, I am an expert. If you have 2, 5, 10, 15, 20 years of experience in a specific industry, in a specific area, your price point is going to be higher, right, than someone who is at entry level. So that's one thing. You know, look at the amount of time and experience you have in the space that you are venturing into as a business owner, as a coach, or as a consultant, one. Two, look, identify what do I want to make, and you back into that number. If you want to make $120,000 a year, that's $10,000 a month. That's X amount of dollars, $2,500 per week, right? Don't get me to, I'm not going to drill down to the 40-hour point, but back into your number based on your expertise. But you can throw out, I want to make $1 million, but do you have a service, a product, an experience that is worth $1 million? If you watch Shark Tank, which I love when people go and they present these ideas and they want $1 million for 10% of their business. So you're saying that your business is worth $10 million. Prove to me that your business is worth $10 million. That's really important. To Delinda's point, look at Glassdoor and the various sites that tell you what the pay rate is for that particular position or role, but also take into consideration your own individual experience, your expertise, and the breadth and scope of your knowledge in that particular area. It's not an exact science, but the Harvard Review, and for me, I've looked at the Harvard Review. I've searched and researched consulting service prices, coaching services pricing, and it'll give you a baseline based on years of experience of service. Thank you for letting me add that, Delinda.
You're welcome. You just explained that so beautifully.
I don't know about I'm just telling the truth about what I did, because what we find, especially as people of color and women, we undervalue ourselves. We say, I just want to get my foot in the door. We're not going to get into the career side. Or I just want to start the business. It took you 3 hours to make the thing that you're selling for $25, right? Well, how much are you making per hour? Like, are you, is that a what did you call it, Delinda? A minimum?
Ask.
I love that. You're saying my time is only worth X per hour. Your product includes the cost of goods, the cost of time, the cost of expertise, the cost of, there's so many factors, and we will build on that. But I want to encourage all of us to not devalue, undervalue, and undermine our own success by accepting something that we know is less than we deserve. It's nothing wrong with, I've worked at McDonald's. My first job was at McDonald's, right? But now I'm at a stage in my life where I may not want to work in a McDonald's, but I'm fine with owning a McDonald's, right? I'm going to a franchise, but we grow and we evolve and we elevate, and that dictates and determines your worth. Devonna, does that help? Devonna said, I'm out of here, y'all.
I'm here, Robert. I'm here. Yeah, that's also, I just have one quick question for Delinda. Is this going to be is there any way that this could become a podcast or a YouTube situation or no?
So we're figuring that out right now. We don't have details on how we're going to actually roll it out, because this is a multi-series type of thing. So when I get that information, I'll make sure that I communicate it. So right now we just don't know how we're going to present it. I know that we plan to share it to the page, but going forward, we might do something different.
Okay, all right.
Devonna, you are the star pupil of the day. Thank you so much, Devonna, for the questions, Michael for the questions, Teray for the questions, and those that we didn't get to, as Delinda said, she will be responding via email, Monarch Business Services. We want to send, again, a big shout out to each of you for joining and being a part of the Black Financial Literacy Group community, right? This has been birthed out of that. This was 4 friends that came together to say, you know what, we want to be better. We want to use the experience and information that we have to make a community better. We had no idea it would grow into this. So you are a part of an amazing reimagination of what's possible. So thank you for your engagement. Delinda, what final words would you have for our participants today?
Believe in your talent, and your gift will make a way for you. So whatever it is that you are good at doing, believe in that and go for it. The sky is the limit. You set the bar for your success.
I love
and if
it.
you have any questions, you can email me at monarchbusinessservices@gmail.com.
3 S's, monarchbusinessservices@gmail.com.
Absolutely. And thank you guys.
Delinda.
Awesome.
Everyone have a wonderful Saturday. Look forward to our next session, which will actually be on credit and utilizing credit from a home ownership perspective. So stay tuned for more to come. And then obviously the continuation of this series around small business ownership. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, now it's time for the after party. I see we got